Uh, there we go. All right. So repeat that last question.
Why do we, I'm trying to think of how to better phrase it, but why do we desire one state or another to begin with? Like, I understand why the borders get drawn. From a young age, we get banged into often enough that this thing ignorantly starts to throw up lines and walls and such. And, oh, this is over here, and this is over here, and that's over there. But
We construct a framework for our reality that is basically what we can say is that we as humans are capable of understanding the nature of reality in the sense that we can remember a whole lot better. Dogs, for instance, don't know death. They can see a dead animal and it doesn't register me next.
right, we
Okay,
can.
so that's what humans have, so that the kind of
Okay.
world that we live in is constructed differently, and so we live in a different
Oh,
reality than the dogs do. But
than nature.
actually, we're more refined than that because each individual person has their own individual view or version of reality. And it's
Right.
almost like our own personal, all big point of view. We can call it a
Yes.
worldview. All
Yes.
right. And the reason that we do that is because not having one makes things terrifying.
Oh, because if we can't figure out where it belongs, then it's scary to us.
Right, because it might be dangerous. This is the whole point about doubt. Is
Mm,
that doubt brings on that fear of, well, what if I can't figure it out? I
okay.
can't put it into my worldview.
And this brings about anger, fear,
All kinds of
aversion,
possibilities,
desire. Yeah.
including wakening up to this whole to this whole worldview thing that we have, this
right.
constructed reality. We can call it concepts that, in fact,
Yes.
right now we're talking about it in a kind of conglomerate overall way of a worldview, but normally we speak of it in the sense of the various pieces and parts.
Right.
So, in fact, instead of talking about the whole castle, we talk about moats and we talk about drawbridges and things like that. And we need to also draw back and recognizing that what we're really talking about is that all that those rites, rules, rituals, and everything like that is what the scaffolding or the framework is for the construction of my worldview.
How amazing that that goes both ways. That it
Hmm.
can put us into a scary corner, but it can wake us up.
Right. But the
Yeah.
scary corner is when we're doing it with instinct,
Right.
because our constructed reality and the faults with it is very much like the constructed reality that the alligator lives with when he's being picked up by a huge crane and about to get eaten. Not supposed to be that way. Alligators are the ones who eat cranes, buddy.
right.
Okay. So
okay.
animals construct realities about how things ought to be and should be. They just don't have such a long list as us humans.
Right.
Okay, so you could actually then think about this worldview that we have as a structure means that the rules of the architectural drawings.
Right.
Okay, so this is why we want to start looking at the rules, especially as they come up right now, because we have to look at
Right.
the architectural drawing in order to fill in this space of my worldview.
Right.
And we go around basically trying to protect our worldview. In a way, every argument is putting your whole worldview out on
Yep.
display and under attack.
Yep.
Because if they can
Right.
find one little tiny little place in my worldview, the whole thing will collapse, we
Because it's
feel.
all connected.
Because it's
Mm-hmm.
all connected and it's all imaginary anyway, and somehow at a deep level, we know that.
so then I guess the question I have too is why do we desire awakening? Does that make sense?
Well,
Because
what
in
we
my mind, the way,
actually do, no, wait a minute. We put that as
okay.
part of the rules. Why do we don't desire awakening, but we do desire. And it's
Okay.
uncomfortable as hell, and we don't like it, and we want out of that desire, except that we don't recognize
Got it.
that's the circle we've gotten ourselves into. Okay? We want out, basically.
Of desire and aversion, of
Well,
craving, of
no,
tanha.
that's what you add to it. Let's look
Okay.
at the actual deep level fear or the deep level feeling is what we want to escape from.
Oh.
We don't like being afraid.
Oh.
We don't like it.
No.
No,
It's true.
but it not only is dangerous in the sense of anxiety attacks that are unnecessary,
Yeah.
or lying to the police unnecessarily, and then you're in really big trouble. All of that kind of big stuff, or even at the biological level, people who are filled
Right.
with fear often have ailments.
Yes.
But in fact,
Stress is the
the
number one
guys
killer.
that are most hung up about sex and think about it so much of the time wind up with prostate cancer.
Yes. Right.
Hence,
Oh.
I offer you the Catholic priest. They're famous for having prostate cancer.
Interesting. They're also famous for restricting.
All right. So, in going on with that, we don't also like fear because the fear itself, is a signal for danger. That in fact, it
Right.
is the self-preservation mechanism that is sounding the siren of fear. And it has a whole lot of chemical components that are going in there with um, uh, oh,
Cortisol.
adrenaline is the number one, cortisol, all of those protective kind of things to pump us up, get ready for fight or flight.
Yes.
And that getting us ready for fight or flight is also called a state of freeze. And if an
Right.
animal freezes too long, they're eaten.
Done.
And so we have to get past that freeze point, but humans are really good at freezing.
Yeah. For
And
years
that
and
means
years
we're
and
not
years.
breathing very well. And so we're not able to, because of all of the adrenaline and the blood is getting into the body ready to fight or flight, there's not much blood left in the brain to think with. And that's when we need it most as humans.
Right. Right.
Okay. And so what we need to do then in the practice of Anapanasati is to start looking at the fear when it's at a very low level and the kind of thoughts that bring it on, because often there's adrenaline pumping going on that most people are not aware of. They're just
Right.
agitated and they don't
Right.
even know that it's because the body is full of these chemicals that are based upon the fact that you're terrified of something or another.
I
And in
laugh
fact,
because it seems so silly to be so scared.
that's exactly why a whole bunch of police will gang up on some kid and beat the piss out of him, is
Right.
because they had to chase him down, and that was a lot of work, and I was afraid I
Yep.
was going to lose him. And so now they're absolutely ginned up with all the fear, and that turns immediately into rage.
Yep. Right.
And so the cop is almost like a gun going off
Yep.
himself.
Exactly. Whether they have a pistol in their hands or not.
Well, right, exactly. It doesn't matter about the discharge of the weapon. It's that built up um, anger, frustration,
Right.
and fear that this guy's going to get away.
So when we have a desire for awakening, we have a desire to extinguish fear, to stop having these feelings.
When once we wake up to the fact that the problem is the fear, and that we need to wake up to it whenever it does occur, and tell that child, that little infant, everything's okay.
Right.
Rockabye baby, top, lullaby, and good night. Everything is okay. You're safe. You're secure. Look at what's going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way we begin to train ourselves, is to see that fear, because those fears came from something unwholesome. We could almost define as what makes a thought unwholesome is that it's got terror built in as part of the seed of it.
Wow. Right. What a good distinction.
All right. So a wholesome thought is going to be a soothing, gentle thought.
Okay.
That everything is okay. That's the wholesome. And generally, the reality is that's how it is.
Things okay. Yeah. Right. Even when things
Okay.
don't seem like they should be okay, they're more likely than not more okay than you think they are.
Exactly. Well, here's the point. How often do you actually get chased by the police and
Or
you're
any
running
number of
down
other
the
things.
road to save your
Mm-hmm.
life? That doesn't happen
Right.
very often.
No.
But how often do we feel like that's what's happening?
Right.
Way
Often.
too often.
Way too often. Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And so we're not living in a real reality of actually having to run away from the police and being chased.
Mm-hmm.
But we feel like things are that dangerous,
Right.
when in fact it's not.
Even simple things can fire that up.
hmm This is the state of us being human and still with this animal thing that is called the instincts, the self preservation instincts, the old programming that was given to us as humans as a gift from whatever was before us. And it
Right.
looks like that those guys had some stuff going for them. I've even mentioned, I think, to you about fire and
Yes.
dogs could
Yes.
have been given to humans before humans existed. That it was part of the heritage that came down. That
One
in
would think
fact,
so. It's certainly been
right,
around, right?
right,
Yeah.
because without humans being born as a species already eating cooked food,
Right.
right? So who taught us how to cook food? Mommy and Daddy, who were not quite
Mm-hmm.
human. And sometimes we recognize that even at home. These people are not actually human. I'm the human here. And that's true
Yes,
because
sir.
every generation we become more
Mhm.
human.
Right.
And parents are afraid of losing control because in fact they do.
Yes.
Because the next generation of kids are smarter than us,
Right.
and we don't
How
want to
interesting.
give them that credit.
Right. Interesting. Hmm. So here's a question about Paticca Samuppada.
hmm
We know this is the way that things happen. This exists, so that exists. This doesn't exist, so that does not exist. Where in the links in are they Nadanyas? Is that how you say it?
I don't know. I don't know the
Oh,
word you're
in the
using yet.
the 12 links. Where in the 12 links is volition? Where is will? Where is for example, when I change an unwholesome thought to a wholesome
From
thought, I throw out
feelings, from feelings, the will to want.
okay,
I like it is the feeling. I want it is the
is the
will. The
craving,
clinging is the full blown will that winds
the
up often
becoming
being
is the action.
disappointed. So we have Vedana, the feelings. Then we have Tanha, the beginning of will. Then the full blown will. But the surprise is that the self and the will at that level are deeply connected. That
Right,
in fact you could have asked, is that where the self comes from?
right,
But you asked the will, but it's the same thing.
right.
Okay. Self
Oh,
preservation, the will to live, the will to strive, the will to go get what I want.
so what are karmic propensities? Where do they fit into that chain?
That's just
From
another word. That's just another
for
word for
habits?
habit.
Okay. So where does the habit does it just shorten the amount of
From
time
the
from
karma, from the
craving to
old
clinging?
action, from the old
Mm,
actions.
And
Okay.
this is what sense impressions do, is when they make an impression on our mental continuum, they bring about a patterning.
Maybe we can give you this little phrase. Okay. Thoughts and feelings run tighter circles around each other, and that will bring rise to voice. That we will say it, that almost always every criminal will threaten before he does it. Okay? That in fact cobras stand up and wiggle around right
Yeah,
before they strike. You know they're
so
about to
they bite.
strike before they actually strike because they'll
Right.
signal that. Okay? This is
Okay.
what we're meaning is that we make a voice or we sound it out. Whatever we say as humans then will become our actions. So we'll actually
Yes.
go out and do the axe murder that we warned somebody that we were going to do because that was what we were thinking about or whatever
Okay.
it is. Okay?
Right.
So with actions repeated, because all of this stuff is on a roll, this is all
Oh yeah.
samsara wheels of doing it. And if you keep doing it, it becomes a habit
Yes.
like smoking cigarettes. The
Right.
first time a kid smokes a cigarette, they hate it. Every one of us hate that first cigarette.
Yeah. But I smoked for what, 20 something years, you know?
Yeah, but the first one you
Yeah.
hated.
Didn't
Okay.
like it. Yeah. Taste bad,
But
smell
you
bad.
kept doing it until you got used to it and then you became addicted to it. That's the habit.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Very much
And
so.
then the big surprise is that our habits lead to our destiny.
Right.
Who we are then, the destiny, who you're destined to be, your personality, is nothing but a pattern of habits that
So
you
who quit
hold some.
smoking?
Huh?
Who is it that quits smoking?
The one who, the wisdom. Okay, so we can say now we're adding wisdom to the thing. We can see that the
Okay.
dangers are real in this direction. And I've been paying attention by being afraid of things that happened in this direction, which would be like the present moment. Well, wisdom gives us the ability to see dangers ahead so that we can take actions now to avoid them.
Okay. And this is going
Just
against
like every automobile accident, almost every one of them would be prevented if people were watching where they were going and saw what was happening. The
right.
trailers would not jackknife if the driver is skilled enough to know what it's like before the car not, or the truck jackknifes, so that he
Right.
doesn't put it in that situation.
Interesting.
Okay, so this is all about wisdom, which means this is the actual awakening, is that we start paying attention to reality right here, right now, and pretty darn quick at it, rather than keep trying to make sense out of it, understand it, put it into our worldview, figure out whether we agree with it or not, etc., and all of that kind of stuff. So then the feelings arise. Well, we don't need any feelings. What we need is to look.
Look at the contact.
Look at what's going on. Use your wisdom eye. See how things are going, the trajectory. The example that
Do
I
we
use, go ahead.
do we ever actually see anything other than what the mind throws up? So, for
Actually,
example, I watch a bird, or
mm-hmm,
I watch this finger. Well, I'm
all
watching
right,
the finger on the phone, but you know what I'm saying. But I'm
okay.
not watching the finger. I'm watching what the mind creates after it takes in a bunch of light bouncing around. If
Right.
we
So
even know that there's light, but we don't
that,
even know that there's light. The light could
but
be of the mind.
all right, let
Is
me
that
put it like this for you,
okay?
is that that's the best part of being human is that we can figure out the trajectories of that bird. Okay, now there's roots of that in the sense of, let us say, a bird and a snake are fighting with each other, and they're watching closely the movements of each other so that they can anticipate it and meet them. So as the
Right.
bird flies up, the snake jumps up also.
Right.
Okay. So they already have a very primitive version of this. Humans, because of our large capacity for being able to receive data and keep track of a lot of it, we're not doing it very well. Computers now are better at remembering things than humans, but we've
Much
got
better.
a lot of it ahead of the animals.
Right.
And because of that, we put things that way so that our wisdom means that we can see the dots. Even if the dots are happening once a week or once a month, we can put it together, just like Galileo was able to figure out
Watch
the
the stars.
projections of well, of the moons, and then
Yeah.
got the orbits of the planets, just because he kept looking at it and meticulously measuring, and he figured
Mm.
that stuff out and proved the entire church and everybody else wrong, and
Mm.
they hated him for that.
Right. Why? Why are we scared to be separate and together?
It didn't fit into their worldview.
Okay.
And people get terrified when they lose their worldview. I mean, it's almost like when he said that, it's almost like the heavens themselves are falling. I mean, Chicken Little, the
Right.
sky is falling. That, that's what happened to the Catholic Church when Galileo came by.
Yeah. Right.
Their whole cosmos was destroyed right in front of them.
hmm But okay, so here's a question. In that tradition, for example, there are contemplatives that have these realizations. Is it simply because they call it God that they're not terrified?
Actually, each individual person uses their own internal language. Sometimes it's pre-verbal,
Mm.
but an experience is just an experience. Okay. But sometimes an experience can really give us some information we need. An
Right.
example of that is walking into the kitchen and having a conversation with somebody, and you put your hand down on the stove because you know that it's off, and you get a scorching reception and you burned your hand. And then you recognize from now on, you're going to be careful of that stove.
Right.
Okay. Walking into fire, getting injured is a big wake up call for us. And we remember that stuff. That in fact, we remember the most dangerous things that have ever happened to us are the things that we remember the most. The times when times were tight. The example
Mm.
that I will often use is little Johnny is writing on the wall with crayons, white wall in his bedroom, and his
Yeah.
mother comes in and catches him. Now she's got two choices. One is she can compliment him on being a budding Picasso and get him some good art equipment, or she can raise Cain about the landlord
Mm.
and painting the wall and this kind of stuff, which is where most of them go. And so
Right.
now little Johnny, when he remembers that, he's going to remember getting fussed at.
hmm
He's not going to remember how much fun it was to actually do the drawing.
Right.
That's the way the human mind works. It doesn't work that 100% of the time, but that's the basic way. Is that the self-preservation instinct wants to make sure that we're going to avoid danger. That's what the whole point about staying alive is all about, is to stay out of danger.
And not we, but I.
Hmm.
So what of altruism? Is this a short circuiting of this?
Well,
Or is
what
it
we're
a
actually looking
deeper
for,
pointing?
actually, it means that we're bringing wisdom into our selfishness. We're bringing wisdom in, that I'm not alone, that I've got friends
Right.
here. Let me treat my
Right.
friends the way I want to treat myself. Okay?
Hmm. Why is that comforting?
Well, why not comfort yourself? I mean, that's what the whole part of Anapanasati is all about, is to stop being afraid. Because often when we're afraid of those people out there. And when we're no
Right.
longer afraid, we're not afraid of those people. They're our
Right.
friends now.
When I think
There's
about
nothing
what
to
I'm
be
afraid
afraid
of the
of.
most, the thing I'm afraid of the most, I think, is being alone.
Well, you can't do that.
Can't be afraid or can't be alone.
You can't be alone.
Yeah. Full rule
Even
on.
when you're in the solitary cell in a prison, that's about it in
Mhm.
our Western imagination, how alone you can get, or perhaps
Right.
alone and in a desert. But that's a different situation because that's downright dangerous, the desert itself. Alone has got
Yeah.
nothing to do with it. Where's that drink of
Right.
water? Okay.
Right.
But if you're in the prison cell, you're not going to be alone. I mean, if you leave the food out, you're going to have a mouse or a rat or at least some uh, cockroaches. You can have a
Something always.
party. You can feed
Yeah.
them. Okay. That in fact, that's quite common for people in prisons. For a guy to have a pet mouse or a pet rat. Sometimes the
Yeah.
pet rat actually saves the guy's life for some reason or another, like jumping in the shirt of the guy who's about to beat him up or something like that. You know.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So being alone then is still a mental state,
Right.
not a reality.
No.
And if you're in still, they don't do but 20. They taught it 23 hours. At least you have an hour. You can be
Yeah.
nice to the guards. You can say thank you when they serve the grub.
Mm-hmm.
You compliment them on doing such a good job and taking care of you all, so that you have some peace and quiet.
That's wonderful. That's
Okay. Well,
very
as
wonderful.
you're
Right.
saying, but
Yeah.
as you're thinking, now we can recognize that your fear of being alone is a construction that you've made up because you have not ever been in a situation where you were alone.
Correct.
So you're afraid of something that you've never seen and doesn't exist and quite likely to not ever exist.
Right.
And if you make friends with yourself, then it doesn't matter. You can be alone because you got friends. And the better part of it is that if you're friends with other people, they won't leave you alone.
Yes. How amazing.
And so, see, there's nothing to be afraid of. So now your worst fear is just right out the door.
Right. Done
What
gone.
a relief that is to recognize that the number one feeling was irrelevant all along.
Yeah. That is very relieving. That is very
That
comforting.
I just talked myself into feeling afraid when there was nothing to fear
Hmm.
except fear itself. I don't know where Churchill got that expression, but he was so spot on. That's
He was
Dhamma.
pretty brilliant with it, wasn't he?
Uh huh.
He talked about his depression as a little black dog that followed him around. It's nice to sit and feel okay.
Yeah, feeling okay. That's what this practice is all about: is to recognize that I don't have to fear anything.
Right.
What a relief that is to not
Certainly.
have to be
We can get
afraid of.
it done.
Hmm?
I mean, like you said, we can get so much done. Even
Right.
if
If
just
we're not.
done with fear is done enough.
Hmm. Yeah, I've got time.
Hmm.
I've got time.
Tons of it, yeah?
Well, right now I do.
Oh, that was something I thought on. I wanted to ask you about as well. This is
Uh huh.
another rule that we have, this time thing, yes?
Mm-hmm. Whole set of
So when I
rules
look
about.
at my present experience, anything that happens to do with the future is happening now. Anything that happens to do with the past is happening now.
Oh.
But anything that's happening now is also happening now, but it's only dependent on the other two times existing, isn't it?
No, those two times don't exist
This is just this
except in
moment.
your imagination. You made them up.
Right.
Okay, you stored that stuff away not very well, and you retrieved it not very well, and you think it was all real, and in fact, the past is dead. You can't pick it back up. A cup is broken, period. But until the scientists, or perhaps the neuroscientists, figure out how we can turn the clock backwards, we're just going to have to be content that it rolls the way that it does, cause and effect, rather than effect and cause. But a lot of
Right.
people want it to be the other way around. In fact, I just saw you do that. But
Tell me
that's
how.
a
What did you see? I
right.
want to know.
Oh, I thought it was before, but maybe it was something with Keyshawn earlier today. But in
Oh,
any
it's
case,
very possible.
um, yes, we do. We confuse cause and effect. You can, in fact, say that wisdom is being able to correctly see cause and effect. Because then you can see this stuff causing over here, and you can recommend, or you can recognize, I wonder when the effect is going to take hold.
Interesting. So, is there any point in looking for the cause, or is there only a point in looking now?
Well, looking to see what is, and pretty soon, as humans, we begin to make these connections.
Okay.
That in fact, this whole set of connections that we're talking about here was when the Buddha figured out, aha, I see you. And that's where he was able to put the whole thing of Paticca Samuppada together. And so by doing that, we're quite grateful, because I could not have put two and two together, and he's put 1 to 12 together, and
Right.
that was brilliant. That it may not be perfect, but it certainly fulfills the service. It's serviceable,
Yes, very
and
much so. Very true.
no other tradition that I know of it has quite that serviceability as the teaching actually of the Buddha. Not
Right.
many different Buddhist groups here and there, and not psychology. I've been down that path. Not in
Hmm.
engineering, though they've got a whole lot of good stuff going for them. At least the engineers can put a building up and keep their house from going on fire. And if they knew how to put their engineering skills together and start looking at their own mind, they wouldn't put their own internal house on fire either.
Very true.
They'd know how to wire it up when they're electricians.
So, is that part of what we're doing here? Is we're rearranging the
Right, we're
continuum?
stop going by old assumptions
Okay.
that we made as children instinctively,
Right.
and start rebuilding our world as best we can that actually fits reality.
That reality is everything goes together. There's nothing that goes apart.
That this
There's
is a
always cause and
paradise.
effect. This is a paradise. This is a
And that
paradise.
everybody who's out looking for a paradise is destroying the one they've got,
Right. Ah,
because they're trying to fix it and repair it instead of allowing it to be
right.
hunky dory, just the way it is. Things are all right already. The big problem was is that I was afraid when things were all
Right.
right already. And because I was afraid, I had to go find out how I could fix things so I wouldn't be afraid anymore. And that was the basic mistake of
So tough.
humanity.
Yeah.
Basic mistake we make is we want to go fix things so that I'll feel safe, rather than seeing that things are safe. It's okay to feel safe. Now
In
that's
early
profound.
Judaism,
That's the
used
whole
to,
point.
yes, to feel safe, to feel okay,
Well,
to
no,
feel at
that
home.
the basic mistake is that
Oh,
people think they have to go fix things so that they can feel safe,
they've been
rather
fixed.
than, and so they spend all our time making traps and features and all of that kind of stuff to try to fix reality, when in fact if we would investigate it closer, we'd see that it was already safe, and
Yeah.
that it was okay to feel safe
Yeah.
without having to fix it, because it ain't broken.
So what causes us to feel safe? Is it a lack
Wisdom,
of,
again, is to recognize, to investigate, and to see that there is no reason to be afraid. And we can let our guard down. Everything really is all right. Relax, take a rest already.
hmm,
We see that with puppies.
yeah,
But in fact, I've seen films of abandoned puppies that were absolutely terrified of everything. And somehow the owner got a hold of the puppy, and after feeding him and drying off, a few hours later, the puppy's actually going to be taking a nap on her chest.
Mm-hmm.
But not while he was terrified. He had to see that things were okay. Well, see, out in the rain on the road, it was terrifying.
Right.
But in this nice lady's lap with the milk and all, warm and everything, so even puppies can see reality. It's
Right.
humans who can't. We won't trust this woman.
Right. 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 Hmm. Hmm. So danger, real, like, let's not say danger, real danger. No real danger. Let's say,
You
um,
almost in your life, you can recommend or you can recognize you almost never have any real danger. I mean, when was the last time you were actually in real danger? When was the last time you
right.
got robbed? When was the last time you got busted? Not just
Mhm.
stopped for a check, but actually, but it's been so long. I mean, how many years has it been since you were on the battlefield?
Yeah. No,
Yeah, okay,
that's been a decade plus.
all
Hmm.
right.
Right.
But you know, there are
Yeah.
guys who still have PTSD, which means they
Yeah.
still think they're on the battlefield. They haven't
Right.
figured out that they're safe yet.
But we were safe on the battlefield as well, in my mind now when I look back at it. In a very ultimate sense, there was no need even then to fear what was happening. There was only a need to do what needed to be done. And had anything
Well,
happened,
that makes one a good soldier, though.
right,
Okay.
right,
As opposed to a Buddhist philosopher who will say he sees what's going on and, excuse me, I'm
we,
going to the toilet in New
yes,
Jersey.
yes,
I'm going to go find someplace that's safe, really safe.
right. So, hmm. So when we talk about birth and death,
I'm not sure there are toilets in New Jersey that are safe, so God knows.
relatively safer, I'm sure. At least not so hot and stinky.
Hmm.
Hmm. It's
Well,
porta potties in 130-degree heat smell bad.
right, right, and that's also the point of being able to get comfortable. That's what the
Hmm.
whole quality of safe, secure, and comfortable are about. We have to get ourselves into a safe place
Right.
because we know, at least intellectually, that we are either in a safe place or not. And it's
Right.
been kind of a little joke to tease the students about there's no bears in your closet, there's no alligators on the floor.
That's my
Okay.
favorite. Hmm.
So since we are in fact actually alone, at least for the moment, let,
Hmm.
let's take advantage of it.
Right.
So I've got a call coming in. We'll finish this one and then I'll get back with him.
That sounds great.
Um, so anyway, this point that we were making is actually the good place to go with this, is
Yeah.
that it is the fear. And the fears that we're talking about are the unfounded fears that come out of our deep past through our
Yes.
genes that kept us alive. And in fact, our fear often keeps us alive in this life. I mean, those
Yeah.
daredevils would do even more daredevilish stuff and get so many more of them killed if none of them were afraid. In fact, the fear is what makes it
Right.
spectacular anyway.
Yes. Right. Makes it
Okay.
something to look at, a spectacle.
Mm-hmm. So
Mhm.
it really has a lot to do with fear. And when you recognize that, oh, that's the number one feeling that we should be paying attention to. Do I feel uneasy or uncomfortable in any way? Let me go back and get myself into a state of feeling comfortable, safe, and secure.
Right. Like that.
Just like that. or at least within a few breaths.
Yeah, maybe one or two, right? Yeah.
One or two or three, or in fact, when we get into the rhythm of really liking the breath, then we've
Yeah.
forgotten all about where's the fear because we're
We
having too
forgot all
much
about
fun.
counting.
Just, yeah, everything is okay. All right. So, this is the way that we can deal with the fear is to remove it, is by not giving it much of anything. We give it
Right.
no new juice, and we take the focus and attention off of it and let it subside. That we, in fact, we created the fear. We're just not sure of how we did that. But
Right.
watch
And it
closely
doesn't
now, and we'll
matter so
figure that
much. If we
out.
watch closely, we'll figure it. Yes. Okay.
We'll figure it out. We'll see it.
Mm,
Right now, the job to do it is relax.
right. Let it go.
Let that little puppy go ahead and take a nap right on your chest. Everything is all right. No problem. Everything is solved.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So we'll finish now. I have some other stuff that I want to talk to you about, but I've got actually it's
Another call.
Kimasito who's calling,
Oh,
and I want to
good.
get with him.
Good.
So,
Much love,
gosh,
Dhammarato.
this has
Thank you
been
so
really
much.
great. Thank you.
It has. Thank you. Tell Kimasito I said hello.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon, my friend.